Hello and welcome to the 2023 NFL season. For the last 5 months, we have been pathetically pouring over every single aspect of the NFL, all leading up to the best data, projections, rankings for tonight, this season. Almost makes you feel happy to be alive that the season is actually here. On today's show, we are going to talk about Lions-Chiefs Showdown tonight on DraftKings $1 million to first. To discuss this contest tonight, I'm joined by the king of Showdown himself. I mean, my God. Got to follow Cody on Twitter for the most virgin charts about Showdown you could ever find. Cody, how's it going today?
I'm ready to kick the season off. Everything has been analyzed, and to this point, it's been overanalyzed. Let's start playing some football.
Yes, overanalyzed. I would agree with that. Also, professional DFS grinder is with us. Gary Hartman, former Millie Maker winner. Gary, how's it going today?
It's good, man. I'm so happy that we are back tonight. Excited to see Cody continue his success from preseason. Just dive right into a big win tonight. He's taking home $1 million. So next week, I'll introduce Cody the same way.
All right. For those of you who might be new to Showdown, this is one game DFS format. Now, we're going to talk a lot about micro plays here and the actual players in the games and the takes, but a lot of winning at Showdown is understanding what it takes to win in Showdown. So maybe, Cody, in like a minute, can you give any Showdown 101 to anyone who might be new to the Showdown streets here?
Yeah, I wish I could do it in a minute. I'll probably go a little bit long-winded, but I think there's an article on the site that's up for free. I highly encourage you guys to check it out if you have not. It's kind of a 101 introductory level breakdown of Showdown with some data and some information that I think will help construct lineups. And then for subscribers, there's an article that goes a little bit more in depth on some more micro roster construction related stuff. But from a high level view, I think Showdown is about a few things, and first and foremost, you have to get the captain position right. So that article that I just referenced on the site discusses some of the optimal ways to go about selecting your captain. And as you can see, Adam has pulled up on the screen there the weekly point distribution chart. We're looking for guys that have that slate winning ceiling within their range of outcomes. For the Chiefs, somebody like Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes. For the Lions, we'd be looking at guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and maybe Jared Goff to a lesser degree. Once you figure out who your captain is, a lot of it comes down to optimally correlating your lineups around your captain selection. I think that's one thing the field still isn't doing a great enough job of right now. And a lot of the stuff that is up on the site, you can look at some historical data that tells you if my captain is, let's say, a quarterback, for example, here's how frequently I should be pairing him with one wide receiver / tight end, two wide receivers / tight end. How often should I be pairing him with an opposing wide receiver / tight end? And trying to figure out your roster construction from that perspective will really help give lineups an edge once you've found the captain position. Kind of the hidden element that we don't necessarily have to worry about too much in main slate DFS is also making sure that while we're picking the right captain, while we are trying to correlate our lineups, we can't submit lineups into these 300,000 entry fields that are going to be heavily duplicated. If you're doing that, you're just asking to slash your expected value in a huge way. And it's the only way that you can project a long-term ROI is to try and reduce the amount of times that your lineups are duplicated. So in that article, that 101 level article, we talk about a lot of things that we can try and do, to a lot of levers we can try and pull to reduce our dupe expectation, things like leaving salary on the table, things like including low-owned players, and then also, decorrelating some lineups. So if we've already found some correlation with our captain, we can do some things that maybe aren't paired together frequently enough and find ways onto unique lineups. So again, from a 101 level view, we're trying to find a slate winning captain that's got a ceiling. We're trying to correlate around that, and we're all trying to do those things while building lineups that aren't going to be heavily utilized by the field.
Yes, that was more than a minute. You're fired. However, I think that was all very, very, very well said. For tonight's game, you can see the distributions here. You get this outrageous right tail on Patrick Mahomes. You get an outrageous right tail on Travis Kelce. However, the big story of tonight's game is that we are projecting Travis Kelce out. They are still listing him questionable, still say he has a chance. However, they have called up Mr. Bushman, Matt Bushman. And so now they have almost no room, I think, for Travis Kelce on this roster. And we're going to get into their wide receiver situation in a second here. Expecting them to have 7 7 wide receivers active in this game. As we move down here, Cody, one of the best things that I think we do in this article is we do our best to project what types of lineups the field will be running. And so if you want to get contrarian right off the gate, play 1 Kansas City guy and 5 Detroit, right? If you want to get contrarian right out of the gate, 5 Kansas City and 1 Detroit. The most common build we're projecting for tonight is 3 Kansas City, 3 Detroit, completely balanced. Cody, any thoughts on this for tonight?
Yeah, look, the first Thursday night slate of the season is almost always kind of wonky from a salary perspective. Usually the salaries are released weeks in advance. In this case, they were released weeks in advance. And then all of a sudden we've got the second most expensive player on the slate potentially ruled out. It really creates for some difficult roster constructioning if you're trying to go in those onslaught directions. I don't think that 1 Kansas City, 5 Detroit, or 5 Kansas City, 1 Detroit will be heavily utilized at all. And maybe that's kind of a departure from our normal expectations, particularly with the Chiefs on the slate. You can generally find those Chiefs slates to feature a lot more onslaughting than we're projecting here. And part of the reason why we're not projecting a ton is it's just tough to fill out the salaries. If you start going 5 Chiefs, you're looking at Mahomes, and then the next highest expensive player on the slate is a guy that we kind of expect to be limited. So I do think we'll see a lot of 3-3s, maybe a little bit of 4-2s. Would actually not be surprised to see the field gravitate towards more 2-4 roster construction, where we see the Lions heavily featured because you can soak up some of the salary there with Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown and others.
All right. Before we get into it here, I want to remind everyone that if you do not have, wrong one. We're tech lording. Remind everyone as we cover Gary's face here that if you do not have an in-season subscription yet, everything we do on the DFS side from now until the Super Bowl is available as part of the in-season product. All of Cody's articles for Showdown, all our projections, all of our shows on Friday night, Saturday morning, Sunday. Also head to stopjusttherun.com/subscribe. All right. Let's get into some players here. Now, I think that Patrick Mahomes is going to be outrageously owned, maybe even more than we have it here total. And we have massive ownership anyways, 28.5 projected at captain and 93.2% total. I mean, that is outrageous. Gary, I think the reason that this is happening is because with Kelsey out, you get into this situation where, as Cody said, it's not hard to spend your money, but it's easy to make Mahomes lineup. So how are you thinking about Mahomes tonight, captain or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, you can make Mahomes captain lineups and, fill out a really nice roster and then leave like $2,000 on the table still now with Kelsey out. So, which I think is totally fine. And we talk about uniqueness. I think that's so important, especially on this first slate with 300,000 people. You want to get as unique as possible. So, those 5-1 onslaughts with KC, you can still get unique with a Mahomes lineup. And I think, especially if Kelsey's out with using the salary, I think he's a near impossible fade, like someone that I would consider locking in some variety in every lineup. Obviously that can come back to bite you. We're looking at a 53.5 point total, 5 point spread. If this game scores points, Patrick Mahomes is involved. And, it's not like with Kelsey's out, it's not like we have all these super high ceiling guys on the Chiefs that aren't named Patrick Mahomes. So to me, this looks like a good play, captain or otherwise. I don't really care about the ownership. You got to hit the right plays regardless. So that's one that there's some other guys that maybe I wouldn't want to eat the chalk. I don't mind it nearly as much on Mahomes here.
Yeah, Cody, I'm going to bring up some of the optimals here, and this is our sister site, The Solver. And if you're interested in checking out The Solver, you can certainly do so. The link to do so is in the description below. Please, if you sign up for Solver and you want your projections to sync with ETR, use the same email that you use for ETR when you sign up for Solver. But anyways, Cody, if I just asked The Solver to give me, say, 10 lineups here of the optimals, what you're going to get is 70% Mahomes captain, 30% Mahomes in flex. You're also going to get 100% Jared Goff. So I think that we're going to see a ton of lineups, like a ton with both Mahomes and Goff, and also weighted towards Mahomes captain teams. Any thoughts on handling the quarterbacks tonight, Cody?
Yeah, I think for cash, for sure, you want both quarterbacks. And I think you want Mahomes in captain in your cash game or any cash style type contest. You want Mahomes at captain. I think with Kelsey on the slate and salary a little bit tougher to kind of navigate around, I think there were some questions. Can you play Mahomes at captain and still fill out a lineup? Now we've got unlimited value. We've got unlimited salary, really. I think you would be foolish to show up to a cash game without Patrick Mahomes in the captain spot and Jared Goff somewhere in the flex position. As far as how to handle it in terms of tournament lineup construction, where you're really trying to maximize those top heavy payouts. Talked a lot about this in the micro roster construction article that's up on the site as well for subscribers. But really, you're looking at when you captain one of these quarterbacks, you're looking at a spread of pairing him with at least one wide receiver tight end from his same team and up to 3 wide receivers / tight ends from his same team, with the majority of those lineups featuring exactly 2. So one thing that I like to do in the solver here is to just set a rule where I have, if Captain Mahomes, at least 1 KC pass catcher and at most 3 KC pass catchers. And then I'll boost every single one of the Chiefs pass catchers. And then I'll find, sort through those lineups, and you'll find that you're getting a nice spread of some Mahomes single stacks. You'll get some Mahomes doubles. You'll even get some Mahomes triples. And for me, who's building a lot of lineups, that's kind of one way that I like to spread out my Captain Mahomes exposures. Generally and I'll do that same thing for Goff too on the other side. I think both of these, just given their raw projection, given the pass catching options that they both have available to them at the respective price tags, I think both of these quarterbacks make perfect sense at captain. And I even like Goff. Generally, I'm not a huge fan of these pocket passing guys that need to get there, strictly on the passing volume and have these voluminous wide receivers in their offense. But I do think that we could see some Goff doubles get there, and 7% happens to hold. I think just based off of his raw projection and his price, I think he makes for kind of an interesting, not even really necessarily having to sacrifice a ton of projection, but I think he makes for an interesting captain option in tournaments tonight.
So assuming Mahomes plays without Kelsey, I do think it's a downgrade, right? Like, we can't just sit here and say playing without Travis Kelsey and putting Noah Gray in is not a downgrade for Patrick Mahomes. However, this Lions pass defense, as Silva pointed out in matchups, allowed the most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks last year. They have not done much to upgrade their defense whatsoever, which I think is a mistake. And one of the reasons that I don't think they're going to end out winning this division, the Lions, because they did not upgrade their defense. So, it's such a good matchup for Mahomes. Obviously, if Kelsey was in, it's an absolute smash. I still think that most optimals, small fields, stuff like that is going to have a ton of Patrick Mahomes in captain. If I'm playing cash, I'm certainly having Mahomes in captain. I think if in tournaments you can make cases around it, and the narrative would be without Kelsey, he's going to struggle more. Jared Goff, Gary, has been bad on the road, to just put it bluntly. Like, he has been very good with Detroit in the Dome. He has been flat bad on the road. This is a very, very difficult place to play. Now, we know Chris Jones, the star defensive tackle for the Chiefs, is not playing in this game. I don't know that Goff outscores Mahomes a ton of times, but I don't know, 20% of the time, 15% of the time, maybe Goff outscores Mahomes. It's not, 1 out of 10, 1.5 out of 10, something like that. Not often, but somewhat. What do you think about Goff's spot here, Gary?
Yeah, if you guys listened to the show last year, I think something that I like to do a lot with players like Goff or somebody that was going to be, rostered heavily and going to end up in a lot of optimals, but maybe their captain ownership was a little bit less, than maybe anticipated, or a way to gain leverage, is I would come in over on the Goff captain spot, because that he outscores Mahomes.
I think Gary has the New York City internet going on. Gary, if you can hear me, we're losing you. Cody, can you hear Gary?
I don't have him.
Yeah. I believe Gary's in New York, and somehow New York, the most amazing city in the world with some of the most money in the entire world, the internet in New York doesn't work. It's beyond insane. Yeah. Just jump out and jump back in, Gary. But yeah,
I know what Gary was getting at with the Goff discussion, though, and it's an interesting point, and it's something that we did with high volume running backs. It's something that we did with high volume wide receivers last season too, and it's a point that Gary brings up often. Goff's gonna be owned in flex for sure, because you've got the money to get to both quarterbacks, but because of whether it be field perception or whether it be because of the strength of Mahomes above him, he's not going to be owned a ton at captain. So that's why you're seeing really heavy flex utilization at 61%, but not much captain utilization at 7.1%. So it's an easy spot to match the field, or even come in a little bit under at flex. but almost double up in some instances in the captain spot and really attack those right tails with Goff. If he does have a game where he beats Mahomes, it's going to be very likely that he's the winning captain, right? So we want to try and take advantage of that. I think it's an interesting spot to come in, 15, 20% Goff while still managing the rest of your exposure to come in at or around the field.
All right. Let's go to the running back position. I think we have Gary back here. Gary, can you hear us? We can't hear you, Gary, so you're going to have to jump back out again. Yeah, you might have to just leave New York. I mean, period. It's enough already. All right. Running back position is really, really interesting on both sides, I think. Isaiah Pacheco missed most of training camp due to rehabbing shoulder and wrist issues. He got back a couple weeks ago. Our expectation is that Isaiah Pacheco will be the lead back here. However, we are projecting CEH to mix in a little bit more than we normally would if Pacheco had not missed so much time. We also know that Jerick McKinnon, who was the clear third down back last year, clear third down back in the preseason, is in the mix also. So we have a bit of an ambiguous backfield here. Pacheco is also not the kind of guy that profiles that well on DraftKings because he's not a great pass catcher. Cody, what do you think about Chiefs running backs tonight?
Yeah, I think the point on Pacheco missing most of training camp and really not being able to shed the non-contact jersey until August 21st. And I know now we're kind of 2 weeks removed from that, and he's been removed from the injury report. I think it probably means that they're going to open the season with a little bit more of a split than we kind of grew accustomed to at the end of last season, particularly in base down work. And then we always know that McKinnon's going to be there for long down and distance. He's going to be there for 2-minute opportunities. However, the price tags on all these guys are kind of nice and kind of nice from, a perspective of where we can attack them if they do hit their ceiling range of their outcomes. Pacheco is somebody that I'm much more likely to use in game scripts where I think the Chiefs do cover what is now a 4.5 point spread. So I would be thinking through those lineups and how those look. If Pacheco gets there, likely going to be due to a lot of volume on the ground, likely going to be due to some touchdown efficiency. That's going to take away a few more opportunities from the other running backs, but also the other skill position players on his own team. I would be much more likely to use McKinnon in lineups where I think the Lions can keep this thing close, or potentially where the Chiefs are playing from behind to close out this game, and they need McKinnon's skill set on the field. The one that's really interesting to me, and it's tough to go back to CEH as much as the fantasy community has been hurt by CEH after lofty expectations for so long. He's 3,600. We think he might have a little bit more of a week one workload heading into the season. And we're not seeing ownership at all. 12% ownership, less than 1% captain ownership. I'm not saying you need to go crazy here, but I think where he's priced around all of these really cheap wide receiver / tight ends that have now opened up on both sides of the ball, I think CEH is going to go really underlooked. And, this is another guy that's going to be involved in the game if it's either A, close, or B, if the Chiefs do pull ahead. I think they want to probably try and protect Pacheco a little bit. So I like CEH at 3,600 and really only 12% ownership right now.
Yeah, I just want to be clear on CEH. Like, you could definitely be left holding the bag on CEH. Like, if they think Pacheco is completely healthy, we saw last year CEH was completely iced out by this coaching staff. Now, CEH did play with the first team for most of camp, and that's a bit why we have this 6-point projection here on CEH. Pacheco with Chiefs D, like Cody said, I think can make some sense. One thing about McKinnon, though, man, you think that they have to be behind for McKinnon to play. They like using McKinnon around the red zone a bunch also. Dude scored a ton of touchdowns. So I think McKinnon can get there on touchdowns or in a negative game script should the Chiefs fall behind. On the other side, Gary, if you're back with us, are you back with us, Gary? Okay, we cannot hear you, Gary. On the other side, we have the very, very exciting first-round rookie, Jahmyr Gibbs. For those of you guys who are not that familiar with Jahmyr Gibbs, you do not see college running backs with the receiving profile that Jahmyr Gibbs had go in the first 20 picks of the NFL draft, unless it's like Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley. Like that's it. Jahmyr Gibbs was an awesome pass catcher in college. We were all shocked that the Lions took him 12th overall, but they must have big plans for him. The historical history of running backs that go as high as Jahmyr Gibbs went is so strong. However, they also signed Dave Montgomery in training camp. Dave Montgomery is like a reliable pounder. I think he might be a little bit better than people give him credit for. It would not shock me at all to see Dave Montgomery get the first couple carries for the Lions tonight at all. You can save 1,600 by coming down from Gibbs to Montgomery. Gibbs is profile, though, of the back we like to use on DraftKings. Cody, what do you think about the Gibbs Montgomery stuff?
Yeah, this is an interesting spot. I don't think you'll hear me say anything negative about Jahmyr Gibbs all season. And it seems like the coaching staff and the team as a whole, very excited about this guy. You mentioned all the draft capital. You mentioned, the OC Ben Johnson is saying things like we're going to use him in ways people don't expect us to. It's tough to find anything negative to say about Jahmyr Gibbs, the player, and certainly how he profiles for DraftKings. However, like DraftKings is very excited about this guy too, and it seems like the field is very excited about this guy too. He's $1,600 more expensive than David Montgomery, and I know salary isn't a huge problem on today's slate because it is a little bit more of a pick 'em. He's $8,200. He's $1,600 more than his fellow running back in the backfield, and he's 50.9% owned already. So you're telling me that he's already kind of priced towards where I thought maybe like a week one ceiling would be for him. He's already kind of owned to that degree as well. For me, just from like a game theory perspective of the plays that we've talked about in terms of like confidence levels, I feel much better about like Mahomes, even at 90%, even Goff at 60%. I think if there were a spot to get away from, it would kind of fade the week one hype train that is Jahmyr Gibbs. I think we'll ultimately get a little bit more leverage on David Montgomery, just given some of the game script stuff and some of the KC pass catches allowed to opposing running backs and things of that nature. I think this gap in terms of total ownership projection may even widen as we get a little bit closer to lock. So if you want to fade kind of the game script and kind of fade one of the week one hype train of Jahmyr Gibbs, I think the best way is just the direct leverage there with DMont.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting play. I think if the game gets wild, right? If it goes over the total, and by the way, this is the highest total of week one, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have something to do with it in slower, sluggish games that go under the total. I think Dave Montgomery makes more sense. And also, like Chris Jones being out, I mean, obviously Chris Jones is an awesome pass rusher from defensive tackle, but it's pretty big for David Montgomery running the ball up the middle, also not having Chris Jones out there. I do think that matters. Let's go to wide receiver. If Gary is back with us, are you with us, Gary?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, we have.
Oh, baby. Sorry, I had to unplug the mic. You're on my AirPods now, but I apologize for that Bush League showing there.
Okay. All right. So
garbage stuff. I just want to say I'm terrified of Jahmyr Gibbs at that ownership, and also the way the Lions like to use multiple running backs. I know it's not apples to apples with the draft capital there, but at that ownership, I'm terrified. Give me Montgomery all day tonight. But
yeah,
happy to go on to receivers.
Yeah, one thing that I did want to say from a game plan perspective is I do think that like Andy Reid wants to throw, Patrick Mahomes wants to throw. I think they understand without Travis Kelce, they are less likely to be able to throw the ball 40, 50 times and be successful at it, right? So maybe, I don't know if they stick to it because Andy Reid never sticks to it. He had awful receivers in Philly when he was in Philly also and was throwing at an outrageous rate back then also. So I still think the game plan is very throw heavy, but for the Pacheco stuff, for the CEH stuff, I think it's at least worth noting they could come out with a different game plan. We don't have a very big sample at all of them playing without Travis Kelce. Here's how I think Kansas City wide receivers are going to go. All 7 are going to be active. Sky Moore and MVS are going to play the most snaps. They'll be the starters. After that, Kadarius Toney will play somewhere around a third to a half of the snaps as he comes off the knee injury, but his targets per route run on those snaps will be outrageous. Richie James will play a little bit on offense, but also be their primary return man. And I kind of think that Justin Ross actually might be ahead of Rashee Rice here in terms of opportunities. But I think it'll be like a small package of plays for both Justin Ross and Rashee Rice. That's what we have projected. Justin Watson is out there as like their glue guy. They love giving Justin Watson routes. I want to be clear here. You never see 7 wide receivers active. Never. I mean, teams sometimes only dress 4, 5. Andy Reid has never dressed 7 wide receivers for a game in his Chiefs career. This is creating a major squeeze on the projections, right? How can we project anyone for really big when we think all of them, and by the way, all of them are like mediocre talents or whatever, and we think all of them are going to get opportunities. So I feel like hitting on the right guy here is really important tonight, Gary, but that's going to be harder than it seems. What do you think about Chiefs wide receiver tonight?
So a couple ways you could approach it.
price doesn't really matter. We've discussed that, right? Especially if Kelsey's out. So I don't really care about the fact that Justin Watson's 200. I don't think Justin Watson is a very talented receiver that can put up huge points compared to some of these other guys. So maybe you want to pick and choose your couple guys outside of Sky and MVS who we know are going to be out there running routes. You want to make sure you mix those guys in plenty because they are the starters. Outside of that, you can pick one or two that you just want to go really heavy on, or if you're MMEing or just playing a lot of lineups tonight, you just sprinkle in all of them and you get a little bit over the field on all these guys, at least the ones that you think can hit the ceiling. Again, we want to hit the nuts here. Maybe Justin Watson gets a couple, shots down the field, but they have MVS in that role. Ross and Rice are new guys here, shinier toys that I think probably have a little bit of a higher ceiling. So Richie James maybe more on the special team side of things. I still think I'd sprinkle him in, but you're looking at single-digit ownership of all these guys. I don't think I would get too cute and start putting these guys into the captain spot. That is the Ross, Rice, Watson, Richie James tier. Tony's his own enigma. Curious your guys' take on him, but I think probably the way I'd approach it, if I'm MMing, sprinkle all these guys a little bit over the field in the flex. If I was going either single entry, 3-max, or just less than MMEing, I would pick my couple guys, and I think I would go with some of these higher ceiling plays, maybe Justin Ross, something like that, and just kind of go all in on one player.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Sky Moore, because of his price, is going to be pretty popular. We have him for 4.2% captain ownership, 25.2% total. I could see that coming up a little bit just on price, but again, the cap is not tight for tonight's slate. We know the deal on Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He's going to get 4 to 5 targets deep down the field against a burnable secondary. Like it is. That's just is what it is on MVS. Will he come down with them? He's not that good at football, right? So like, I don't know if he's going to come down with them or not, but you're going to get 4 or 5 chances down the field for MVS tonight. I thought Jason Cespedes, where is it? Made a good point here on Tony. No, not that one, Jason. A different good point from Jason. So what we've seen from them with Kadarius Toney is outrageous targets per route run and scheming him like gadgety stuff around the goal line a lot. And we have seen Travis Kelce there too. And so now with Travis Kelce out, I think like there's going to be a package of plays for Kadarius Toney around the goal line. So I like that point from Jason there. Cody, do you want to add anything on Chiefs wide receiver here? But I know it's an important spot for the slate.
It is. I mean, you could say this about any spot, but I think this is the decision point on the slate, and the fact that they're going to have 7 active and the fact that their individual price tags are what they are kind of makes this truly a one-of-one situation. We've really never seen this historically on Showdown. And even with the Chiefs slates where we always talk about them having 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 pass catchers available, we're going to look at a situation tonight after we get to tight end where they've got like 9 or 10 that they could potentially throw out there. And I think that because of the price tags, it creates a little bit of a headache. But one way you can try and avoid that headache a little bit, at least in each individual lineup, is to set some kind of smart rules and groups to avoid cannibalizing upside. For example, if you have Sky Moore at captain, you're expecting Sky Moore to have a pretty massive game. You don't want to play Sky Moore at captain with like 2 of these other guys that might find their ways into lineups just because of the cheap price tags or something like that. So you might want to set a rule that if Sky Moore at captain, at most 1 additional KC wide receiver / tight end, something along those lines, just to avoid that happening. You might also want to try and group out players that you think are competing for playing time together. You mentioned the package plays for Rashee Rice and Justin Ross. If Rashee Rice gets there, maybe it's because he got those package plays that Justin Ross didn't get, and vice versa. So I think you can set some rules and groups to avoid lineups where those types of guys are played together. You can do some similar things for guys like Richie James and Kadarius Toney that might be competing more for skill for slot snaps and things like that. The Kadarius Toney's point that Gary brought up, he's 7K, which is this classic, generally a classic pay up to be contrarian, too bad to be good type of play because he's so expensive. But because everyone's got the money on the slate and he's probably the most recognizable name in this room, I do think he's going to garner quite a bit of ownership. We have 21.8% there. Frankly, you just have the money to get there if you want to get there. So I'm not expecting some massive ownership discount there. However, he is exciting. Massive targets per route run rate, very efficient with the ball in his hands, schemed up into good opportunities. So I wouldn't fault anyone for going after the Kadarius Toney even at 7K.
Okay. Let's go to the Detroit side. I mean, they've lost a lot, I mean, no Hawkinson, obviously, from last season. Jameson Williams is not ready to play. And so you get these really bloated target projections on Amon-Ra. I mean, think about who he's competing with here. He's competing with Josh Reynolds, Marvin Jones, Khalif Raymond, and then the rookies, who I think are good, but we'll see how much they can earn right away in Gibbs and Laporta. And so we have massive outsized target share for Amon-Ra St. Brown. When you play that slot role that Amon-Ra has, it's really hard for the defense. Like sometimes they're just like, oh, you want to take like a 3-yard pass to Amon-Ra? Take it. And that's worth 1.3 points on DraftKings. Super, super, super valuable. I think a lot of the optimals are going to have Amon-Ra, Goff, Mahomes figure it out from there. Gary, what do you think about Amon-Ra tonight before we move to some of these other dusty Lions wide receivers?
Yeah, I mean, similarly to Patrick Mahomes, it's hard, especially with salary available on this slate. It's really hard to look at Amon-Ra St. Brown as a bad play. I mean, it's not like the Chiefs defense are, world beaters in stopping receivers. I think Silva, they were bottom 12 in the league or something in receiver points given up last year. He's was a 1-2 turn guy for a reason, and I would have no issues matching the field, being around the field. If you like this game to play competitive, that happens, and he's involved. Just look at the other names; they're just guys, right? And we'll talk about them in a second. And that's kind of where player takes get into play here with these other guys. But it's Amon-Ra's show, and then it's everybody else. I think you can also make the argument that you can play him however you want to play him, right? If you want to go a Chiefs onslaught with like Amon-Ra the captain, just think that he gets like 14 catches, you could do that, and that's a way to get unique right out of the gate too. If you want to do a 4-2 Chiefs and Amon-Ra's the captain or Amon-Ra's involved, you could do that. So I hate to say like be a chalk donkey tonight, but it's hard to look at this chalk as bad chalk once again on St. Brown.
Sorry, I wanted to pull up this one from Brandon. He said Amon-Ra doesn't get touchdowns. He's too small to be a red zone target. I'm not sure I disagree there. Amon-Ra was among the league leaders last year in players who got who got tackled or knocked out of bounds inside the 5-yard line without scoring. That was one of the ways that Jamal Williams scored 17 touchdowns last year. I think there's some regression there. I think Amon-Ra is just so good. I would not generalize him as a guy who cannot score touchdowns. Cody, I think lineups that have Mahomes, Goff, and Amon-Ra all together for tournaments are dangerous when we're talking about ownership. Would you even think? I think you can play 3 of these guys together. I don't know about the Stone Lotto, though, the 300,000 person tournament. What do you think about Amon-Ra, Goff, and Mahomes all together? I think that's going to be the most popular trio tonight.
It will be. It will be the most popular 3 players played together. I think you can get away with it. Of course, it's going to funnel you to some of these very cheap chalk pieces. So then you have to be careful about the rest of your lineup construction around the 3 chalk expensive guys. You can't go in and play, the Noah Grays of the world, assuming Travis Kelce is ruled out. You kind of have to make some concessions there further down the board. I think what Gary mentioned, and I talked about this in the large field showdown breakdown article on the site. Generally speaking, in the onslaught style constructions, it is a captain from the onslaught side that ends up being optimal. But Amon-Ra is one of these players who can absolutely get there in the box score, even if the rest of his team sucks. He's one of those guys that can rack it up with PPR volume. He can rack it up with yardage. Even if he doesn't find the end zone, he can certainly get there. So one thing that Gary pointed out, I like the Amon-Ra as the captain, or even just Amon-Ra as the bring back in a Chiefs 5-1 onslaught. I also like playing Amon-Ra at captain without Goff. I unfortunately think the field is kind of privy to this stuff now, as they weren't maybe last year or the year before when we were playing Showdown. I think it became so common to pair a captain wide receiver with his quarterback that it was almost forced too much. Now I think people are kind of privy to it, and guys like Amon-Ra can get there without Goff getting there. Just imagine like a 9 for 105 and a touchdown type game from Amon-Ra. He scores 28.5 DraftKings points, but Goff only goes for like 240 and 1. Goff's not giving you much else on top of the production that he's giving to Amon-Ra. So you can just go with the unstacked captain wide receiver and just play Mahomes on the bring back instead of playing Goff. So I think there's a couple of ways to get unique with it, but I agree that 73.2% total ownership is a ton. 19% captain ownership is a ton, but I think it's another one of the safer pieces on the slate given the way that he scores.
Yeah, and by the way, I want to be clear to people that are new. These are ownership projections. When you open up DraftKings, there's going to be some volatility here. We've put an insane amount of work into having the best ownership projections. We think it's insanely important, but of course, there's going to be some volatility there. I saw a good question here from Baitinator. So he asked, does Khalif Raymond play outside a lot or just slot? Will he and Amon-Ra be on the field together? Last year, Khalif Raymond had 330 snaps out wide, 212 in the slot. So yes, Khalif Raymond can, I think, and will play outside. He's also their fastest guy as we move down here. And a lot of times in Showdown, if you're looking for just like a guy that can make a big play, it only takes one from Khalif Raymond, who's outrageously fast. He's also their return man, or at least he was last year on punt returns. I'm not certain if he will this year, but either way, Khalif Raymond at 800 to me sticks out. If we actually needed salary, he would be an awesome play. We don't necessarily need it though. Marvin Jones for 6,200 is just absolutely outrageous. I know Cody's going to sit here and tell me that this is so bad that it's good, but I just can't face 6,200 Marvin Jones. Actually, the props team, we took an under on Marvin Jones. I believe it was around 31 or 32 yards in this game. That is not that applicable to DFS because if Marvin Jones goes for 150 yards, we lose the same amount as if he goes for 34 yards, whereas in DFS, you get paid out an outsized amount. But anyways, I've said too much here, Gary. The secondary Lions options, and I'll go ahead and bring Sam Laporta in here too. What do you think about secondary Lions options in the pass game behind Amon-Ra? Oh, we lost you again, Gary. It's the AirPods.
No, I was muted. I was muted. I'm with you on Marvin Jones, and I know some people in the chat are talking themselves into him the same way. Cody is ready to tell us that he's a great play, but I just can't get there with 33-and-a-half-year-old Marvin Jones. Khalif Raymond would be my guy as well here. Again, salary doesn't matter, but you can paint some narratives, right? Everyone's playing Amon-Ra. There will be some slot snaps for Khalif. Maybe the defensive attention opens him up a little bit more. Found a way to earn some targets down the stretch when they thinned out a little bit last year as well. Josh Reynolds had a couple spike games too, so I guess it would be one of those two guys. I don't think I want to play two of these guys together like ever, unless I'm trying to get really unique in a golf captain lineup. Cody, you tell me if I'm wrong there, but with Amon-Ra's volume, it's probably max one spot of those three receivers. Laporte is the very interesting one though, right? I mean, obviously so much hype in camp. I guess the talk died down a little bit over the last couple of weeks, but not that much ownership. 15% total. That doesn't scare me too much. And if we think for real that he might be the second, most popular target here, give or take Gibbs, right. I like that ownership on Laporta. So probably in a vacuum, he's my favorite. Raymond would be of the three receivers.
Yeah, I think. I mean, the way we have it projected is Sam Laporta as the second target behind Amon-Ra. Laporta and Gibbs are also going to be very, very involved, and that's what in the pass game. That's why you see lower projections on Reynolds, Marvin Jones, and Khalif Raymond here. Cody, any thoughts on Lions secondary pass catchers?
Yeah, I think Raymond and Josh Reynolds, just because of the price tag on Marvin Jones, could end up eating even more into that ownership a little bit and end up coming in a little bit more popular. I was trying to think through this and how this could work. Like one way you can play Khalif Raymond with a few more popular options in the same lineup is just to assume that at $800, he not only beats what he needs to beat his salary expectation, but he just beats the guys that are more expensive than him. And you just end up leaving like 3, 4, 5K on the table or something like that. Like if Khalif Raymond, who projects for only 0.8 fewer DraftKings points than Sam Laporta, just straight up beats him and beats Marvin Jones, who's 6,200, and beats Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's 3,600, like all of a sudden you're looking at lineups that maybe are only using 46, 47K in salary. And despite maybe having a few chalkier pieces in them, won't necessarily be played as often because the field is still going to try and spend up as much of their salary cap as they possibly can. So I think one way to do that is to play Raymond, who's only $800, but then also play him in lineups where you leave a bunch of salary on the table.
Okay. Chiefs tight end. And once again, we are projecting Travis Kelce to miss this game. We have a tiny projection on Matt Bushman, who was just called up, but mainly we expect it to be Noah Gray. Now, Noah Gray is an athletic dude, and they actually trusted him to play a lot. He played around 50% of the snaps last season. He had really good testing numbers coming out of Duke, did Noah Gray. My concern is that this Kelce injury was out of nowhere, right? Noah Gray was not getting ready for this role until, 48 hours ago? And so I'm not sure that they can have, even if they wanted to, a Kelce-esque package for Noah Gray. Now, the sick pups at DraftKings, and these guys are sick, before the Travis Kelce injury even happened, they already had Noah Gray at 2,400. I was expecting to open this up and see Noah Gray at 800. But no, 2,400 for Noah Gray, I think is going to keep ownership in check here. Cody, what do you think about handling the backup tight end for the Chiefs?
Yeah, I think there's a wide range of outcomes on Noah Gray's projection. Now, I will say on his ownership projection, I should say at 16.6% currently. Part of the problem here is we just talked about Khalif Raymond, who's only 800. You have some of these Chiefs wide receivers who are very cheap as well. We don't necessarily need the salary anyway. So I don't think Gray is going to get to some outrageous point. But I will say that some people around the industry still have Travis Kelce with a small projection or with a normal projection, which may be influencing this total ownership here. So assuming once we get to the point where everyone agrees that Kelce's ruled out, you'll probably see this Noah Gray ownership come up. But yeah, shout out to DraftKings for making him 2,400 instead of the stone minimum. It actually makes the slate a little bit more compelling, although I think he will be owned. I agree with you, and I listened to Evan on the Team by Team podcast as well, that this is an athletic guy who was a productive pass catcher at Duke, who has been trusted by Andy Reid and this coaching staff for a couple of years now. I think Noah Gray is going to step into what almost has to be a near every down role. Now,
Yes.
Is he going to earn targets to the degree that Travis Kelce does? Absolutely not. But at 2,400, he doesn't have to. So I think, if it even holds somewhere close to 20, 25%, I think that's a really good number on Noah Gray, who's going to step into an awesome role.
Yeah. Light of Truth says Noah Gray, he thinks will be much higher owned than the projection. I think that's possible. If we're wrong on Noah Gray's ownership, I think we're certainly wrong on the low side. In other words, it could get higher. And by the way, we'll keep refreshing these up until a little bit before lock tonight. But yeah, Gary, what do you think about the Noah Gray stuff?
I think you can make the argument he's the best Chiefs pass catcher just on the slate tonight, because you mentioned 7 receivers active is absurd. It's really hard to figure out how that's going to be broken down. Yeah, I like Sky Moore the best of that group, just as a, hey, this, second year breakout type, running all the starters type things. But, we know that tight end role, even if we get 60% of a Travis Kelce package, 50%, they try to use him to 50% of Travis Kelce's role. At 2,400, whatever, even if he's 25% owned, that seems really good to me. We know he's going to be the tight end one. I also believe in the talent. This is a guy I was kind of just taking in the lottos on Underdog, right? And BBM, I thought he was a great late round flyer in general, just for situations like this. So I've kind of already been playing that narrative. To me, he's good. I don't mind matching the field. I like kind of taking shots on him more than the receivers.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of questions in chat about FanDuel. We will touch on FanDuel once we're done here with the DraftKings salary. Defense and kicker, I think people always get hung up on Showdown, Cody, myself included. Maybe just some general thoughts on how you want to use kicker and defense and Showdown, and then how you think about them tonight.
Yeah, I looked into this a ton because, like you, I get paralyzed by trying to make the decisions on kickers and DSTs. I think for cash games specifically, the kickers are very good options historically speaking. On this slate, it can get a little wonky because we have some of these really cheap guys like Noah Gray. Sky Moore really isn't that expensive. You have Khalif Raymond if you want to go that route. But I still think from a safety perspective in cash games at 4,400, a guy that we trust to get the ball through the uprights in an offense that we trust to score a ton of points. I think Harrison Butker is a very, very, very good cash game option. And then in thinking through how to play these guys in tournaments, it's really tough because they don't cleanly correlate with many of their teammates at all. I did find a little bit of data that suggests if you're playing a captain, if you're playing a captain quarterback, it makes more sense to pair him with the kicker from his team than it does to pair him with the kicker from the opposing team. I think maybe, if you're thinking into that logically, maybe that's just a suggestion that if the quarterback is eating and is producing a slate winning type score, that probably just means more overall scoring opportunities for his kicker. So I think if you're playing a Captain Mahomes, you can consider Butker a little bit more, and vice versa for Jared Goff and Riley Patterson. It's just so tough because they don't, like I said, they don't cleanly correlate with their skill position players. On the defensive side, the one thing that you can do to try and help maximize the DST ceiling when you roster them is to pair them with at least 3 players from their same team. Generally, when defenses get there, it's as a result of preventing the other team's offensive players from also getting in those types of winning lineups. So when you're thinking through when should I play the Chiefs DST, most often they should be played in 4-2/5-1 type lineups where you're playing 4 Chiefs, or five total Chiefs. And then same thing for the Lions. If you want to play the Lions DST, generally that's going to be that they're going to get there as a result of limiting the offensive production of the opposing skill position players. So I like playing Chiefs D with 3 or 4 additional, or like playing the Lions D with 3 or 4 additional Lions skill position players. So not much. It's just tough to get these spots right. They should absolutely be mixed into your pool, but it's tough to know exactly when to pull the trigger on these spots. It's so volatile and so highly variant that you just kind of have to let it run.
Yeah, I mean, we have very low projected ownership on the defenses tonight because both teams have excellent offensive lines. Patrick Mahomes obviously is not giving away a lot to the opposing defense. I think Chiefs defense will certainly be more popular, but they are missing Chris Jones. In like a single entry 3 max, Gary, do you think that kicker and defense is viable tonight? Because I mean, I'm playing mostly single entry 3 max, and I'm always like, man, I just don't know if the kickers and the defense have the ceiling that I need here to win a single entry 3 max contest. Any thoughts on the special teamers tonight?
Yeah, actually, the kickers may be a little bit more viable there than defense tonight, even though maybe you think in general, higher ceiling on defense. You mentioned the offensive line play. Just in general, if we're getting scoring, there's always a chance that we get double-digit points from one of these kickers, and you can be a little bit less perfect in those single entry 3 max fields. So I'd kind of take that floor and then just try to optimize my ceiling elsewhere if I am to go to the specialists. But I think both are in play in any kind of format. It's a tougher on a slate like this with so many offensive points projected and so many good offensive players on the table to kind of hand build that. But I think you can do it for sure.
Okay. Let's go down to FanDuel here. And I know we get this question every year. Why don't we cover FanDuel single game more in depth? The format, and we have looked into this, the format for FanDuel's Showdown is very, 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 very hard to win, almost impossible to win solo, because in your MVP spot, which they call it, which is the captain on DraftKings, you do not have to pay more. In other words, you can just play Mahomes in your MVP spot, and a ton of people are going to do it, and it's most likely going to be right, and it just creates a ton of dupes. And therefore, it's really, really hard to give yourself a positive expectation to win the single game on FanDuel. That said, you can certainly have fun playing single game on FanDuel. Cody, do you want to expand on that at all? And any thoughts on FanDuel for tonight?
Yeah, I think you covered it. Just to kind of back up your point, it's just a less complex game. On DraftKings, you can obviously play Mahomes, and this isn't a great example comparing DraftKings to FanDuel because DraftKings is kind of a pick'em on this slate as well. But when we get into like where slates are normally priced and we have normal expectations of salary, there's just more options on DraftKings. The 1.5x salary multiplier on DraftKings for the captain position makes it a little bit more difficult. You have one more roster spot. On FanDuel, it kind of just becomes a game of like, how many people do you want to chop with up top when you win? And I think it's a tougher way to go about building plus EV lineups. With that said, it is popular. It is fun. I do want to play it more than I have historically played it. Probably not grinding to the degree that I will be trying to grind out an ROI on DraftKings, but I do want to play FanDuel more to try and understand the game better for everyone that has questions about it. On tonight's slate specifically, there are some pricing nuances over there that do make it a little bit more interesting. I think Noah Gray at 5,500 still profiles over there as the very best value play on the entire slate. Sky Moore at 8K profiles as another very good value play. The one interesting pricing flip-flop on FanDuel versus DraftKings, a lot of this is probably just because of the touchdown dependency of FanDuel. You see David Montgomery at 13K. Jahmyr Gibbs is at 11K. We still have Gibbs with a higher FanDuel projection than David Montgomery. It's a little bit closer than it is on DraftKings. But you can see that Jahmyr Gibbs looks like a much better value, point per dollar type play on FanDuel than we have him on DraftKings. And he still looks like a good play on DraftKings. So I think those guys are interesting. You see that the floor is 5K over there, right? Like with somebody like Blake Bell, who's 5K. But then you have guys like Sam Laporta, who's only 6,500. Sam Laporta doesn't profile as nearly a good a value play on DraftKings as he does on FanDuel. So I think those are some of the good options that profile a little bit better on FanDuel than they do on DraftKings. They'll be more owned as a result. But I think just thinking through those situations as you make your lineups is an interesting thing, but it's just so tough because we're going to look at what 50% maybe Mahomes, MVP ownership just because you don't have to worry about the salary multiplier.
Yeah.
And like Adam said, it's probably right that he's going to be optimal most often. So it's just a tougher game to try and get unique. So you really need to be cognizant of how you're constructing lineups over there.
Yeah. Ozzy asked the question, does FanDuel still not provide CSVs for contests? We've only been playing DFS for roughly 10 years. And the answer, Ozzy, is no, FanDuel does not provide CSVs for contests. And basically why that matters to us is because a lot of what we're doing is looking at what has worked historically, trying to run that through models and figure out exactly what wins, what works, what the field is doing, what we should be doing that the field isn't doing. And we can't do any of that on FanDuel because we do not have the CSVs, the results of their contest of what everyone pays. I'd also note that FanDuel is extremely touchdown heavy. If you're playing on FanDuel, all that matters is touchdowns. I mean, that's it. And so, you start to see here on DraftKings, obviously you get much bigger actual projections for players because we are getting the full point PPR. All right. Hope that all makes sense. We have about 5 minutes here for questions. You guys can fire away, ask any questions that you would like, and we'll answer as many as we can in 5 minutes before we get to the flag plant portion of the program. Before we do, if you have not gone to stopthisrun.com/subscribe, just out of your mind. Everything we do on the DFS side, Showdown side, from now through the Super Bowl 3 massive Showdown slates per week for each of the island games. Cody will have no cock left by the end of the season from grinding all of them. All right. Let's see here. Anything on Blake Bell to fade the Noah Gray stuff? So I think Blake Bell is like mostly a blocker. However, the Chiefs do these weird things around the goal line. I mean, weird things around the goal line with weird players all the time. It would not shock me if Blake Bell had something around the goal line tonight, but I don't think I'll be playing him. Gary, any thoughts on getting off the Noah Gray stuff for Blake Bell?
Yeah, I think in the lotto it's in play. And we were talking a little bit about, wow, crazy Noah Gray was priced 2,400 because I think they were trying to buck a little bit of those $200 tight ends getting there last year. And then of course Kelsey, we're projecting him not to play, and $200 tight ends are back in play. But I don't think it's a great play. But as you mentioned, we've seen some weird touchdown stuff with the Chiefs. The problem is, again, salary doesn't matter that much. If this game hits 60 points, a one touchdown for Blake Bell might not matter, quite honestly, if salary doesn't matter. So I think it's a little bit less attractive than when a $200 tight end scores on a normal Showdown slate.
Yep. Well said. The Brandon says your projections for Montgomery don't look like they included Chris Jones being out in the forecast. I can assure you, Brandon, that we are looking at everything. There is a ton of historical data out there. People massively overrate DVP stuff, defensive players, cornerback matchups, defensive tackles being out, linebackers. I mean, in the grand scheme of projecting for fantasy, I promise you that this doesn't matter that much. However, I think Chris Jones is an awesome player, and we have ticked up Dave Montgomery, but it's like so slight. Press says in games that shoot out, let's say over the 55 total, do both quarterbacks make the winning lineup more of the time or just one quarterback? Let's say it goes over, Cody. This game is 30-something to 30-something. It's kind of hard to see not Goff and Mahomes both being in the optimal, right? Or do you think there's other ways there?
Yeah, historically, when we see the game go over the total, and let's just assume a normal spread and a normal final result, something within 7 points or so, you will probably see both quarterbacks in the optimal lineup or close to it. Will be in a majority of the top 1% finishing lineups for sure. Generally, it just means that they've carried more of the production, more of the scoring production for both teams as a whole. And because of the specific pricing on this slate, I think it would probably be very likely that both are in the lineup.
Braden asks, will McKinnon or Tony play more? So I think it's going to be close. I think Tony, like I said, will play around a third to a half of the snaps. I think McKinnon will play all of the clear passing snaps plus some red zone stuff, which will probably come out to around 20 or 25 snaps. So I think it's really close. Either of you guys have a take on McKinnon or Tony just straight up playing time?
McKinnon for me. Yeah, I think that's safer role. Tony, been a mess throughout his whole career, but just returned to the practice field. I think it's more gadgety, especially early on.
Don't listen to Gary, by the way. He is one of the scorn Giants fans that Kadarius Toney has been in the DMs cursing at all season. Ozzy makes a good point. Blake Bell is a beast at blocking. Yes, agreed. Do you think the Lions can keep it close? I do not. So a lot of Showdown is like this kind of stuff, right? Like, how do you think the game will go? I was actually surprised that the line was 6.5. Kelsey goes out. The Chris Jones news, which was known, but then gets announced. And the line goes down to 4.5. I mean, that seemed like a really, really big move to me. I think that the Lions are like a really bad road team and an overrated team. I think the spread should be higher, but I am no betting bro. I don't bet games. I don't bet totals. I don't bet sides. Cody, any thoughts on just how you think the most likely the game will go?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm glad you brought this point up. I don't think I can beat sides or totals either, but I thought it was kind of interesting that it moved from 6.5 to 5, which is where I actually bet the game. And then it goes down to 4.5. I'm kind of surprised that, what I think most of us think is one of the best quarterbacks of all time, certainly one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now, losing a 34-year-old tight end at home against the Lions would be worth 2 points. I still think the Chiefs probably cover this 4.5 point spread and probably handle the game. And that's, I think, a majority of the way that my teams are going to be built, expecting this game to finish somewhere around 7 to 10 points in favor of the Chiefs. And as a result, you'll probably see a lot of my Showdown lineups feature a few more Chiefs than they do Lions.
Okay. Pass catcher locks and cash. Showdown cash, I think, is like, and I love to play cash, but Showdown cash, I think, is a thin place to try to make a living. If I was playing tonight, I think I would almost certainly have Amon-Ra in there, and I probably would have Noah Gray in there also for cash. But yeah, I mean, you're going to get a lot of dupes. You're going to get a lot of 1v1s unless you really get some good action. Everybody's going to have Mahomes and captain and stuff like that. So I think it's a tough way to make a living in cash on Showdown slate tonight. Sammy says the Lions on the road and grass. No, thank you. Yeah, I mean, they've been bad on the road, period. If Kelsey ends up playing, how much do you anticipate the field to play him? Given what they did, I mean, they called up the defensive tackle. They called up the tight end. I really would be shocked if Kelsey plays tonight. But yeah, I mean, the bottom line is that when late news hits, the higher the stakes are, the more people will be swapping to Kelsey. At low stakes, people are, living their life and having fun and doing things that we should all be doing, and they won't be at their phone to get Kelsey into their lineup. So I would kind of think of it like that. Andrew says, if you play Gibbs at captain, can you play Goff as well? I definitely think so. I mean, if Gibbs is the captain, to me, he gets there catching 4, 5, 6 balls. So I think that's a no-brainer, right, Cody? If you play Gibbs at captain, you can play Goff.
Yeah, even for like traditional running backs who get most of their scoring production on the ground, they correlate positively when in the captain position with their quarterback. So absolutely, for somebody like Gibbs, who's going to get there a ton of the times through the air, you can correlate him and boost Goff in those lineups as well.
Yes. All right. Let's see here. Looking for just a couple more before we got to get in here. Yeah, the contest selection for Showdown article, and by the way, you can find my contest selection article for what I think people should be thinking about for main slate, would not mirror for Showdown. I would be playing more tournaments for Showdown than cash. All right, let's see here. All right. Any props for the people? We've taken so much. Everything that we like, we've taken, and we've blown the market out. So I'm sorry. If you are interested in props, please see the FAQ at the top of the site. It would not be a Showdown slate if we didn't talk about double dipping. Yes, what Michael is referring to is if Richie James returns a kick for a touchdown and you have him and you have Chiefs D, you will get double credit for that. We have looked at this, and it is not a plus EV play. It happens fewer times than the field rosters it. However, if you catch one, you're off to a good start if Richie James can take a kick return or a punt return for a touchdown. All right. We've said enough. We probably said too much. Let's get to the flag plant portion of the program. I will give Gary the floor first for his first flag plant of the 2023 NFL season. No pressure whatsoever, Gary.
So I too like the Chiefs with the points tonight. I like some of these onslaughts as well. 5-1, I think, is kind of the approach I want to go. So naturally, I'm going to flag plant a Lions between the tackles running back and in David Montgomery, just because I think it's purely a play off of Jahmyr Gibbs, and you do see a good amount of total ownership there on 37%, but I wouldn't be surprised you get to see him ease in a little bit more than we think as the rookie. A lot of coach speak. We'll see. I'll see it when I believe it when I see it. But they gave Montgomery the bag. We know Jamal Williams was the GOAT in goal line stuff last year. Even if we get 65-70% of that offense running out that way, we should get a couple goal line looks from Montgomery tonight. So I just like it as the pure pivot to Jahmyr Gibbs. So give me Monty as a flag tonight.
All right, the pivot from Jahmyr Gibbs to David Montgomery for Gary. Cody, I give you the floor.
I need to apologize. I didn't mean to sound so dismissive of Travis Kelce when I referred to him as a 34-year-old tight end. He's one of the best of all time, but that pass catching production is going to need to be replaced by somebody. I think the field will gravitate a little bit more towards Noah Gray. I think Sky Moore being 4,800, the field will gravitate naturally towards him. I think you'll even see a little bit of funneling towards Kadarius Toney at 7K because we have the money. No one wants to play Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He's not a good real life wide receiver. The yards per route run have never been good. The targets per route run rate has never been good. But now he's in an offense that lost Juju Smith-Schuster, won't see Travis Kelce on the field in all likelihood. I think he's going to be out there for 80 to 85% of the snaps as they keep him out there in a more permanent role, and the rest of these guys rotate in around him. He's going to have a high ADOT. He's going to have an opportunity to come down with a few of those deep shots. We just need to run pure on the efficiency. And I think if we do, we could see a slate winning performance from MVS.
All right. Marquez Valdez-Scantling at 5,400 for Cody. I'm going to go with a guy I don't even like because the field has turned on this guy also. Everybody's turned on this guy. Giants fans hate him. Fantasy people hate him. Everybody hates the guy. When he's out there, all the guy does is make plays, and that is Kadarius Toney. The Chiefs love this guy. Tried to trade for him, couldn't get it done, then did get a trade done for him. He ran 85 routes last year for the Chiefs, was targeted 27 times on those 85 routes. He's coming off a meniscus injury. I understand that. However, he's been back practicing. I think he's going to play somewhere between 20 and 35 snaps tonight. And with Travis Kelce almost certainly out, they need Kadarius Toney badly. And so you lose Mecole Hardman also. You get more gadget opportunities for Kadarius Toney too. You lose the goal line stuff with Travis Kelce. I think it sets up really well, and they need it tonight to score a lot of points for Kadarius Toney. A big middle finger to all the Giants fans like Gary from Kadarius Toney tonight. 2 touchdowns, optimal captain, Kadarius Toney. What could possibly go wrong? Nothing. Nothing could possibly.
Joker season in play. There you go.
All right. This was a lot of fun. We will be back most Thursdays. And also, I believe Gary and Cody will be here Sunday this week as well, ahead of the big Sunday night showdown slate. I believe that's Giants Cowboys on Sunday night. They'll be back for that.
Oh, baby, it is.
If you have not subscribed to our YouTube, it is indeed free. Please hit the subscribe button so we can keep bringing you free content like this. And if you're interested in taking fantasy very, very seriously this year, like we do, check out establishtherun.com/subscribe. For Cody, for Gary, for producer Adam, that's me. I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.